Hey, to anybody who's watching, what's up? Back with another episode of New York City DDR history, and this is my perspective and my take on, my time playing DDR and what it was like playing DDR from 2002 to about 2006. So, in my last video, I broke down what the vibe was in 2004. I spoke about the competition and tournaments and how my friend Andre beat me in an options perfect attack tournament in Long Island at FYE. So around this time, this is like the later part of 2004, and I had only been playing DDR since the end of 2001, but really it felt like we had been playing DDR forever. Like, DDR was such an intricate part of my life. And DDR is a popular video game. It was becoming a popular video game back then, but everything I did was in one way or another related to DDR. If I worked out, if I went to the gym, it was like, how can I just make myself better at DDR? Like, what exercises can I do to make myself better at DDR? How can I make my memory better so that I can get better at DDR? Like, my reaction time. How can I make my reaction time quicker so that I can get better at playing options with DDR? Like, everything was about DDR. And it had felt like we'd been playing forever. We'd only been playing for like 2 or 3 years, but it felt like it was forever. The later part of 2004, it was really cool because New York City was really what we cared about most, because at this time New York had really developed an identity for DDR, and it just felt like, from the perspective of DDPD anyway, or anybody who we hung out with, it felt like the city was ours. It was a weird feeling just being like 19, 20 years old, like to get on the train and just look around and be like, I am like the best in this city at a up and coming popular video game. And it sounds kind of weird, but like, it just felt like we owned the city in that aspect. And New York City, I don't know if anybody else ever felt like that when it came to other things in New York City, but New York City was always big on handball. It was always big on basketball. If you go to Rutgers or West 4th Street, you can find any kind of competition. Like, if you go to Union Square, people playing chess, there's always going to be somebody who's the best at something. And between me and Angel, Fat Axel, and Devil in Black, and Jinx, shortly after he beat me, he disappeared from the scene for a little bit. His parents moved, and he was in a serious relationship, so he kind of fell back for a while. Well, he just fell back. Like, that was his last part of playing DDR. But for us, especially in DDPD, it just felt like we were the best at this thing in this city. That's how it always felt. Like, I always told people, when you say, like, you don't want to be too cocky because there's always somebody better than you at something. We were the somebodies that were better than somebody at the something. That's how it always felt. That's what I used to tell people. Like, I used to tell people, how people are better than somebody at something. With DDR, I am the somebody who's better than the somebody. And it just felt like we owned the city. I remember getting on the train, going to like a tournament or a meetup, or just to go play DDR in like South Beach Arcade or Coney Island. And I almost used to feel bad, like if I had a day off or it was like a Saturday and I was going to do this fun thing, and I would look at people on their way to work, I'd just be like, damn, like, I'm part of this community and I have all these friends and I'm going to do something so fun. And this person is just on the train reading a book on their way to work, and like they're not part of that. I used to feel that way a lot when I would go to Fun and Games in New Jersey. It was such an adventure. It was only like a 25-minute bus ride, but when I would go to Fun and Games, we would like post on DDR Freak, like, I'm going to Fun and Games. Or, to bring it back for a second, before social media, before MySpace, a lot of us used LiveJournal. And like, we were all friends with each other on LiveJournal. If you don't know what LiveJournal is, it's like this online blog posting site. I think the most popular thing that's out like right now, like LiveJournal, is maybe Tumblr. But like we were all on LiveJournal, and somebody would be like, you know, meet up at Fun and Games on Saturday. And Fun and Games was this arcade in New Jersey. So like, you know, Saturday morning we would all meet up at Port Authority, because that's where that's the bus terminal. And we would buy our tickets. We'd meet up at Port Authority at like 11:30 in the morning, and it could be anywhere from like 5 to like 25 people meeting up, buying our tickets, and getting on this bus and taking this 25-minute bus ride to. It was just in Willowbrook in New Jersey, Willowbrook Mall, but it just felt like an adventure, and I was like, it was so fun to do stuff like that, you know. And I always just remember like being like, damn, like. There are people who don't even know about this community, and I'm like going to play DDR for the day. Just a vivid memory of that. Around this time period too, the skill level in New York City really increased. You know, like I really emphasized in my previous video, like we weren't doing the whole AAA thing. I had snagged AAAs here and there, whether I was playing with somebody on the pad. Like if somebody wanted to play with me, and like, you know, if you play with somebody, they get the second song or whatever, they pick something and I would AAA it. Or in a tournament, somebody would pick something on me and I would AAA it. And I'm talking about 1x no bar. Like I AAA stuff on speed when people picked it on me, and I just didn't even care. But the skill level really increased when it came to options. It really increased when it came to options. At this point, when me and Fat Axel were going to the arcade, we were warming up. Like the first song that I would pick, I would get on the pad, and the dichotomy of the way people played after I stopped playing blew my mind, because I needed the pads clean and like sticky so that I wouldn't slide all over the place. That's how I needed the pads. And after I stopped playing, I used to see people put baby powder all over the pads. I never understood that, but anyway, I would get on the pad, I would have Windex and a roll of paper towels with me. I would spray the pad down with Windex. I would wipe the pads down. I would do like 30 seconds worth of stretching, or I would stretch before I got on the pad if I was waiting for my turn. And the first song my warm-up would be like Max 300 on shuffle. That was my warm-up. That was like what I would use to like warm up and get like anywhere between like 5 to 15 grates on it. And that was just like my warm-up. That was just like, all right, let me get my blood going, let me get my legs going, PSM heavy on shuffle. That was like what I warmed up with. And I was really a different person, but like my mindset in terms of competition and how much better I wanted to get was like on another planet. So I would warm up with shuffled 10-footers, and then it was just like onto the options or edits. We would play a lot of, sudden shuffle flat wasn't really challenging anymore. It actually made most of the songs in DDR easier because it isolated. It just made you be able to focus on the top of the screen. So we were starting to play sudden shuffle flat with speed, because that was harder, because it was less time that you got to analyze which arrow you were going to step on. So like we were doing like 200 beats per minute, 1.5 sudden shuffle flat, or 2x sudden shuffle flat. Like we were playing like songs at like 150 beats per minute on 2x sudden shuffle flat, really trying to push it in terms of like our sight reading ability. This is all shuffle, so there was no stealthing involved, and we were really trying to push it with sudden shuffle flat. And really the pinnacle of S4R, sudden shuffle flat, was 10-footers on S4R. And that, to me, that was like one thing that always would catch my attention. And I never saw anybody do this, except the only person I ever saw who did this, who like impressed me. There were two people actually. The JSB had passed PSMO on 1.5 S4R. And there's a documentary that wound up coming out on, I think they recorded it when he played in 2003 and 2004, but they put that on YouTube later down the line when YouTube was like out after we stopped playing. He was playing Adam Awe. Adam Awe came to the first Digital Life DDR at NYC Jacob Javits tournament, which I'll talk about later on in a different video, but him and Adam Aw were playing, and they recorded them in this documentary, and JSB passed PSMO S4R on 1.5 he passed the PSMO on 1.5 S4R. So like in my head, that's where I was going. Like that was the future of DDR to me. You know, like I just didn't see the value in like playing PSMO, trying to shave it down from like 4 grades to 3 grades to 2 grades to 1 grade to AAA. Like for me, I needed to get better. I would have to me, I felt like I was gonna AAA the song at some point in the future if somebody picked it on me in a tournament, but like I didn't want to waste my money and my time trying to AAA something. I would rather have like started to practice on S4R, 1.5 S4R. So to me, 10 footers on S4R, really, like if you were trying to say something to me, that's what you would have had to play for me to even get my attention. The only other person that really got my attention with this was BigMatt. Later on down the line, BigMatt started playing options, and I don't know if I saw him I don't think I saw him pass it, but he had a picture of him passing LOM on S4R without the bar, and I thought that was pretty impressive. But we were playing 10 footers on S4R, and I eventually wound up doubling all the 10 footers, not counting Bag and Sakura. Like I double A'd those too, but I double A'd all the 10 footers on S4R eventually. In the late 2004, I had started to play them on S4R, Max 300, Paranoia Survivor. Those are the first 2 that you go for, and I had double A'd those on S4R. Maybe PSM Heavy. But you know, in 2004, from a physical point of view, I was in my prime. So, you know, we had the 10 footers on S4R, and then we on the opposite direction, and this is really where Fat Axel shined. We were playing slow songs on Hidden Shuffle Flat. We called it H3SR, Hidden Step Revolution. H3SR, Hidden Shuffle Step Revolution. Caught a brain fart. So Fat Axel was really like at the forefront of Hidden Shuffle Flat, and I remember us like drilling Electro Tuned. We would play Electro Tune on Hidden Shuffle Flat, and I remember SDGing that plenty of times on Hidden Shuffle Flat. And Electro Tune was like kind of a tricky song in general, but we were tuned into Electro Tune, no pun intended, like playing it on Hidden Shuffle Flat. It's not easy, and I don't think Hidden and Sudden work the same way anymore on DDR Ace, but I think you can like control where Hidden and Shuffle appear or disappear. But back then it was just like a standard like this is where the line is, the, you know, imaginary line of like where these arrows appear or disappear. And yeah, Fat Axel was just like, he was on it when it came to Hidden Shuffle Flat. We were playing really slow stuff. We had gotten to a point where we were playing the really slow songs like Sana, Orion .78, Amaro Mix or whatever it's called. We were playing that on Hidden Shuffle Flat. We had gotten to Bag on 1.5 Hidden Shuffle Flat. We were able to do that too. I wasn't really good at that. Like I would get like I would double A it, but I wouldn't like get like SDG on it. But at this time, nobody else was really able to do that except for Fat Axel and Chris Fire. Those are the only 2 people I remember doing that on Bag on 1.5 Hidden Shuffle Flat. So we were playing that. We were playing 6 option, you know, which was, like I said before, it was Shuffle, 1.5 Boost, Dark, Hidden, and Flat. So we were playing 6 option, especially on the 10 footers. Max Unlimited 6 option was always kind of tricky, so I used to like playing that, and LOM 6 option, because they were fast to begin with. So like I used to like trying to play those. And what we were doing, like when especially I was still doing it after Jinx stopped playing, but when he was playing, we were playing 3x on really fast stuff. We were playing 5x on slightly slower stuff. And we were playing, we had double A'd some stuff on 8x. The one that I remember the most that me and him were trying to do was Silent Hill. We were playing Silent Hill on 8x Shuffle. And double A'ing it, maybe even SDGing it. I can't remember for sure, but like 8x was just, usually 8x was like for people to stealth stuff. Like nobody was really playing 8x. So I had gotten to a point where I was playing on foot. I was playing 8x stuff and doubling it at around 130 beats per minute. And then on fingers, like I would go home and I'd play like, you know, DDR Extreme on my fingers on my PlayStation pad, and I would maybe play a little faster, like maybe like 140, 150 beats per minute. I would use that and transition that into the arcade. I don't think I ever got 150 beats per minute on 8x Shuffle, but like I was moving in that direction. In my head, this was what I needed to do. So for us, this was the future. And there was this argument that you would periodically pop up for people who didn't really see this as being what a DDR tournament should be, like options. They would say like, well, you know, we have these tournaments, it's not fair because New York, they play options. And I always thought that was so silly, because I was like, the options menu is on every DDR machine. It's not like New York DDR machines were the only machines in the world that have options menus. And this is a point that I actually wanted to make in my previous video about AAAs, and why I never thought that AAAs meant that you were just better than somebody if you had AAAs. Sure, if somebody can't match your skill level and you have a bunch of AAAs, then you're better than them because you're just better than them. But a lot of people, when they play DDR, they AAA'd, they would say they AAA'd Extreme, or they AAA'd most of Extreme except for Bag or something. And what they really meant when they said that was they AAA'd everything on heavy difficulty, at least when I played anyway. They AAA'd everything on heavy difficulty and challenge difficulty. So if you take that logic and you flipped it and you were like, well, I know you have 200 AAAs on Extreme, on heavy and challenge, but I have 450 AAAs on Extreme, on beginner, light, and standard. Are you gonna seriously say that because somebody has more AAAs than you on an easier difficulty that they're better than you? No, of course not. Like, I wouldn't, nobody would. You would be gaslighting somebody if you tried to make that argument of like, whoever has more AAAs is the better DDR player. If I took that stance and I was like, well, I AAA everything on beginner, light, and standard, everything in the game. So I have 3 times as many AAAs as somebody like who only AAA'd the game on heavy or challenge. Does that mean that I'm a better player? No, like this person AAA PSMO on heavy. I AAA'd it on light, beginner, and standard. That doesn't mean I'm a better player because I have more AAAs. So I never understood like AAAs as being the benchmark for like the be all end all benchmark for like who was the better player. Again, like I mentioned in my previous video too, I think people were just playing the game and enjoying the game and trying to get like this is like the epitome of a perfect score on this step chart. And I don't think people were looking at it the same way that I was looking at it. I was looking at it from like a competitive point of view. Like, I want to be the best player in New York City, and then eventually the best player in the world, in my eyes and the people that I played with. But AAAs weren't going to move. I had like 20 to 30 AAAs at best. And I just like, I don't think I tried to I tried to AAA Burning Heat after I retired from DDR. It took me, I went to South Beach Arcade one day, and it took me about 7 or 8 tries in a row before I AAA'd it. This is 1X, no bar, and I tried to AAA Cartoon Heroes, and that took me about 5 or 6 tries, 1X, no bar. And I will periodically, and I did this with Vanity Angel just because Vanity Angel, I always had like a sentimental place for me. But every few years I would go back, even when I stopped playing DDR, and I would go back and AAA Vanity Angel just to like, it made me feel grounded. And I did that. I AAA Vanity Angel like a week ago. I went to like a DDR Ace machine, like 20 minutes away from me, and I played Vanity Angel like 3 or 4 times until I got all perfect. So aside from that, I just had like 20 to 30 AAAs, but it didn't mean just because I only had 20 to 30 AAAs that I wasn't better than all these other people, because like those AAAs never helped them in a tournament, like I mentioned previously in one of my previous videos. So I did not and still don't agree with that logic. I think AAAs are very impressive. I think it's really impressive. But if I don't want to just say but if, like, it is very impressive. Back in the day, to give credit to Take and Yasu and Aaron, like when I first started playing DDR, these three people in my eyes were the best three DDR players in the world. They would just even on 7th mix they were AAA and stuff. I'd seen 5th mix AAA pictures on AaronInJapan. I thought it was amazing, and back then I couldn't even fathom AAA on Max 300. And you know, Take and Yasu at AAA, and one of them AAA'd 300 times because it was Max 300. I thought it was that's not to say that AAAs aren't impressive, but like if you're comparing it to like what JSB did, and even Foyboy, who I'll mention a little bit later on when I talk about In the Groove, but even Foyboy and JSB and like me and Fat Axel and Jinx and then BigMatt, like Matt really revved up in the options game later on, like in later part of 2004 and 2005, and Chris Fire and Dino. Like, you're not picking Max 300 on one of us, or like even me. You AAA'd it a couple times, and you know you want to pick it on me because you looked on my NNR account and you didn't see a score for it, or like you saw like a picture from like a year ago where I had like 9 greats on it or something. You're not picking that on me. That's not gonna help you. So, you know, this really formed the identity of New York City DDR. Like part of this me going on kind of this miniature rant is like, part of it is like personal, but it really I'm emphasizing like this is what New York City DDR was in 2004, the later part of 2004 going into 2005. You don't come around here, pull up till. I remember one time this guy, I don't remember who it was, and I think he knew who I was. And we were at the Port Authority arcade, which was a pretty cool arcade. I like Port Authority. And he was like, you know, you talking for a minute. And then he gets on the pad. I don't know. He was being a little showboaty. He was a New Jersey DDR player, and at the time he had a lot of AAAs. He gets on the pad and picks Healing Vision Angelic Mix, puts it on 2X, grabs the bar, and I was just like, I forgot what he said, but he was really trying to impress me with like him picking that and trying to AAA it. And I think he got a grade or two. But I was just like, that's not what we're not doing that over here. I don't even warm up to that anymore. I don't remember the last time I played this song. Like, somebody probably picked it on me in a tournament and I got like 1 grade on it or something. So this is the identity of New York City DDR. You know, you having a couple hundred AAAs or being 5 songs away from AAA Extreme, we were so far ahead of that thought process. We did not care about that. JSB had already come to the CSA 2 tournament. Me and Fat Axel had already gone down the path, and Jinx and even BigMatt and Chris Fire and Dino. We weren't trying to hear that. So the community formed this identity of like options in New York City. And to, you know, just to reemphasize, like I was at the forefront of this, but it wasn't just me. Like this kind of trickled down into the other players. You would see people playing like S4. It wasn't uncommon to see like Maurice or Lewis from Staten Island, or like somebody from NYDS, or you know, Devil in Black, or somebody just, you walk into an arcade and somebody's like trying to AAA something on S4R or like 6 option. Like this was what it was around our hood. And I knew at this time it wasn't like this in other parts of the country, but this was NYC, and in New York City we didn't care about anything else. You know, one thing I want to touch on real quick is like I said earlier, this was such a it felt like such a long time from like when I started playing DDR, and I was so engulfed in the community that I felt like 2002 and me playing DDR with my cousin Shayna, I felt like that was like another lifetime. And I was so competitive that I remember like me and Fat Axel would like scout other communities. Like me and Stefan used to do this too, me and 123 Kid, but we would kind of scout other communities. So one one community I remember in particular, I'll go back a little bit in time. In 2002 or 2003, I think this was during the seventh mix era, but me and 123 Kid wanted to go to an arcade up in New Rochelle called New Rock City. So if you played DDR during this time, you probably remember I was at New Rock City for a kid's birthday party a few years ago, and they still had DDR machines and In the Groove. But they had an arcade, and it was a healthy arcade. Like it was like a very big, flashy arcade, gigantic. And let me start off by saying me and 123 Kid met up. You know, by this time me and Stefan are friends, and we linked up with this old school DDR player who's actually, I consider him a good friend of mine, Rodney. His nickname was Roddiness. Rodney went on to become well known in the fighting game community, but back in this time, Rodney was like an old school DDR player. I think he either was in JDS or he just hung out with the JDS crew, with Sean and Spider-Man and all the JDS guys. Like he was a little bit older than everybody, so he was like, he hung out with them. I always thought Rodney was like kind of an OG, but he was from like the I don't want to say uptown, but like just like the Bronx / Yonkers / New Rochelle area. So he knew a way to get to New Rock City by bus, and this was the first and last and only time I ever went up there by bus. So me and Stefan linked up with him. I remember being somewhere in the Bronx, and we were waiting for this bus that, it wasn't a regular MTA bus. It was just some bus that went from the Bronx to New Rochelle. And we took the bus up there, and we went up there. This is the first time I went up there, but it seemed like it was one of the first times that Stefan went up there. And this is where Rodney would sometimes play as well. Even though I think he used to go to Broadway City, he would sometimes go to New Rock City. And the community there, like I remember going up there, and it was just like, it was so innocent. Like these players were all friends with each other. They didn't really know too much about DDR Freak, and we were just trying to scout like what's the competition like up there. And aside from Rodney, who played DDR, Rodney was a little bit of a freestyler, but he just played to play, from the third mix days or whatever. Aside from Rodney, there was another player up there. His nickname was either Peary or Pyrie. I think it was Peary. I think that's how we pronounced it. And he was like the best player up there. And I don't want to take credit for saying like we put Peary on to like DDR Freak, but I just remember like after we went up there, I feel like we kind of polluted the community, because before we went up there, all these people kind of got along with each other, and it was like, they all seemed like they were having a fun time playing DDR. And then I remember like going up there and talking with them, and me and Stefan were like, y'all should go on DDR Freak and like make an account. And like I remember shortly after, they started arguing with each other, and they kind of fell into the DDR community. Some people stopped playing. It was similar to like what happened. My friends, like my old friends, had stopped playing DDR, and I always remember feeling like we were kind of like, it was kind of giving the vibe of like the destroyer of worlds. Like I loved the DDR community and I loved playing, but it just seemed like this dark cloud would just move around and like find an arcade and like engulf the arcade and the rest of the community, and then all that innocence would be gone. Like these people would be part of the community. The same thing happened, I felt like, in Fun World in Fordham. I felt like they had a little community there. I don't remember the specifics of it. Visor Julio would know better than me, because that was kind of close to where he lived. But I remember there was a player up there named Kiana Q. I think we just call her Q. She was really nice. And I remember her being up there, and she was also kind of part of New Rock City. Like she played there as well, because it was like up in that area. And I remember like I just felt like that arcade also kind of got engulfed. I feel like Coney Island kind of got engulfed in the community a little bit. They kind of stayed a little separate, but I felt like they got a little engulfed, and we would just scout and search and destroy these areas and try to find people who like, I just wanted to know if there was anybody better than me eventually. Even before I was the best, I wanted to know who was good. But it did come with its downsides and negativity, and like that's just what it is. Which on the opposite end of the spectrum, I always really admired untouched and innocent communities. And one of the communities that I discovered going back to the end of 2004 was the Port Authority DDR community. Now, I don't remember how many people remember this. Maybe this is just something I didn't really talk about, because I thought that this community was so innocent and it looked like these people were having a good time. The Port Authority DDR community was this group of, like, it seemed like anywhere from 7 to 15 players, and they had their own website. They had this GeoCities website where they each had their own profiles. They had a team name, and if you were in Port Authority, like at the bus terminal, you walk past the arcade, there was like this big glass so you could see inside of the arcade before you even went in. And they would do meetups on Fridays, and they would all meet up and play DDR together. And sometimes I would walk past on a Friday. This is like when I was like, I'm sketch, like I'm playing options and I have my K-set freestyle. Like I could just walk into any arcade and just like, I could stealth the 10-footer, play K-set, and like spin out, like, because we used to do that too. We would spin really fast songs like Healing Vision, Angelic Mix, or Trip Machine Love Mix, or whatever. I could go into an arcade, I could spin out Trip Machine Love Mix or Healing Vision, Angelic Mix, play K-set, stealth PSMO, and just walk out and have people just like but I would walk past this Port Authority arcade and I would see them there on like their Friday or Saturday DDR meetup, and I always just thought, like, I'm gonna leave these people. I don't want these people to like get engulfed in the community, because I feel like to a certain degree the community was poisonous and toxic. And they all look like they're good friends and they're having a good time. That's not to say that they didn't know about DDR Freak or that they didn't go on, but like we didn't try to. I tried my best, and I don't think that we infiltrated that community. We would play at Port Authority because a lot of us, me and Jinx and Fat Axel and Blake and Lone Wolf and Frequency, all worked at UPS. There was like a UPS hub in Manhattan by 42nd Street. So we would stop at Port Authority and we would work a late shift. So we would stop at Port Authority, play DDR, and then go to work. So we would play at Port Authority, and they had good pads, but we just kind of left it alone, you know. Like I left it alone. I just remember seeing them and being like, that's really nice. I remember a time where DDR was like that for me, and I didn't want to like engulf them in the community and like create rivalries between them and like have them only focus on 10-footers and options and AAAs, and like they just having a good time. Just like leave them be. I think one of them. I mean, I knew a couple people from Port Authority, but like one of them, I think his name was Ramon. He went on to be in like a really good Soul Calibur player. I think I've seen him in a couple of DDR tournaments. Soul Calibur tournament. I think he was like a really prominent Soul Calibur player. Another one of them who played at Port Authority, he went on to be like a really good Marvel vs. Capcom 3 player, and his name was Joseph. And I think his nickname in Marvel was Crazy Joe. He played DDR. From what I remember, he was at Port Authority. He was a Port Authority DDR player. I moved back to Brooklyn with my family up until a year ago when I moved out of New York City, and I discovered that I lived right across the street from him. So I hung out with him once, and we were playing. I think we were playing the new Streets of Rage. We kind of just like hanging out playing Streets of Rage, and but he was a Port Authority DDR player. And another one of the Port Authority DDR players, I believe Terry, who also wound up, like, after we played DDR, he wound up, like, we had like a nice little group of people that we would hang out with. Our friend Sarah El Said, and just like it was a good 15-20 people who would hang out. We would go to Sarah's sister's house, and I remember him being part of that group, but I think I remember him being part of the Port Authority DDR people too. So that community was just like, as late as 2004, like there were a few communities, and Port Authority is one of them, where I was just like, man, I remember that innocence. And I for no other reason than just like, I just didn't want them part of the DDR community, because they all looked like they were having a good time. They didn't have to worry about score or 10-footers or Oni-core scores or anything like that. And I hope that that doesn't come off like, I hope I don't offend any of those people who were watching that. Like I'm not, that's not to say that they didn't know anything about the DDR community. They knew us, but like we didn't try to like swallow them into the community and like go there and be competitive with them and try to get them to like AAA or get good scores on 10 footers or whatever. I just felt like it was better off if they just kind of enjoyed the game and had a good time. And you know, it's funny because like when me and my wife met, my wife didn't know anything about DDR. She didn't know who I was, but she did play DDR in high school, and she, you know, she played at home, and she had like the plastic mat joint her and her brother would play, and she said that she worked at Best Buy, and she had like a little DDR community of people. She worked at Best Buy, I think it was like somewhere in Queens, and they were selling DDR. I think it was Extreme or Extreme 2, whichever one was the latest one in 2006. And by this time, the Red Octane dance pads had become popular, and they were selling them in retail stores. So like she was playing DDR at work to try to sell them. Like they had a little end cap display, and she told me that they would always play, and they had a little community of people in Best Buy playing DDR. And like she had no idea who I was when we started talking to each other. I think one of the first things I said to her, she was like, oh, she messaged me and she was like, oh, you know, like, you play DDR? I play DDR too. And like, I was just like, what arcade do you play at? Like I had to know like where she was from. And she didn't even play at arcades like that. I think her answer was like, I think I played at Chelsea arcade once. I had heard of Chelsea having a DDR machine, so I was curious about like who the players were there, and her mind wasn't even there like that. She had been part of an isolated DDR community, albeit it wasn't an arcade, but like her Best Buy community was like its own isolated thing, and they didn't have to worry about all of the bickering and the intricacies and the competitiveness of the actual New York City DDR community. So I always thought that was interesting. I'm gonna stop the video there. In my next video, I am gonna talk about In the Groove and what that was to us in New York. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and you know, let me know what you think and if you have any thoughts, and you know, stay tuned for the next one.